Not as tall as you, but
You're doing good, though. You're doing good.
good morning, everyone. My name is Rich Payne. I am the Regional Director of HSSQE for Hornblower, and I'm very proud to be standing in front of you here this morning to talk about a lot of exciting things that are going along with the citywide ferry. Myself, I'm responsible for all of the safety, training, security programs that go along with the citywide ferry. I started my career working as a deckhand. I had a chance to seek opportunity and promotion from within companies similar to what we do here at Hornblower. I was able to take my career further through SUNY Maritime College right here in the Bronx. And I was able to get a master's degree in international transportation management on top of a bachelor's degree, as well as a unlimited license for deep sea vessels. For the last 20 years, I've been in the maritime industry, and it's been something I've been extremely passionate about. Working on the water is something that not everyone gets to do every single day. And for the opportunities that have been presented to myself over the years is something that we're trying to bring back here with the new commuter ferry service. There's a lot of exciting things that are going on right here with Citywide Ferry. One of the most exciting things is that we've started to hire our first round of captains. And those captains who would probably have preferred to be up here, they are down actually in a little bit warmer climate down in the Gulf, where our first few vessels have now hit the water. And they are starting the very important process of what we refer to as sea trials. During this process, the captains, they try out the boats, these brand new, beautiful looking vessels, state-of-the-art, innovative, and we're going to be serving this community with those vessels. Another very exciting piece to what we are here for today is right here in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, the future home of the citywide service. And I want to thank Mayor de Blasio for bringing back the first commuter ferry service in over 100 years. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the mayor.
Thank you very much. Well done, brother. Well done. Well, Rich, thank you. And I want to just express my admiration. Starting out as a deckhand, working your way all the way up to the top of the organization. This is the kind of opportunity we want to see for more and more people in New York City. So we are here to celebrate so many aspects of citywide ferry service, but one of the most important is it's going to create opportunity. Opportunity for folks working right now, the good men and women doing the construction work right now on these piers. Opportunity for folks who are going to be working on the maintenance of these vessels and running the citywide ferry service day in and day out. Opportunity for people who work here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard or are seeking jobs here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is increasingly a center of employment for this city, who now are going to have an easier and better way to get to work. Opportunity for people to get around this city more easily and get from places that in many instances have been too isolated, get to where there is economic center of activity that'll give them jobs they need. All of these things will happen as a result of citywide ferry service. And, you know, it's amazing that it's been almost 100 years. You know, this is something we've seen in cities all over the country. Unfortunately, for decades, American cities turned away from their waterfronts and didn't regard them as places of opportunity. Over the years, that's been recognized as a mistake, and New York City and many other cities have more and more embraced the waterfront and tried to give people more access and get the most out of them in every sense. But that being said, the notion of truly citywide ferry service has remained elusive for decades. And we came to the conclusion that it was an old idea whose time had come again. An old idea, but one that made a lot of sense in today's world. Because we all know what's happening in our city. The city's growing, which is a very good thing in so many ways. The largest population we've ever had and growing, the most jobs we've ever had and growing, the most tourists we've ever had and growing. These are examples of why we need to think differently about how we get around. We all know that our subway system has been at or near all-time highs now for the last few years in terms of ridership. We all know our roads are more congested. All those pieces fit together. We weren't turning to our waterways enough. They've been staring us in the face, but we didn't take advantage of the opportunity they afforded. And now a lot of people in the city, and you're going to see this later on this year in the summer, people will be able to get around in an easier way. They'll have a great alternative, certainly a great reason to get out of their cars, a great alternative to other types of transportation that may not be as accessible or convenient to them. This will be a game changer for many, many New Yorkers. So it's exciting for many reasons. But we're here at the Navy Yard because we really want to focus on the impact and the connection to jobs with citywide ferry service. And, you know, a lot of times things that happen in New York City have to be, when you talk about maintaining vessels or a lot of other activity here, a lot of the jobs connected somehow end up in New Jersey or in other parts of the metropolitan area. We really wanted all of the jobs associated with citywide ferry service to be here if that was possible to do. That was our goal. And we found with the Brooklyn Navy Yard an extraordinary partner. Now, I don't need to tell you guys the history. This is one of the great maritime locations in the history of New York City. This was one of the most pivotal civilian locations in the American war effort in World War II. It has become a modern success story in so many ways, again, because of the extraordinary job creation here and because of the businesses flocking here and because of the Renaissance of Brooklyn. But there was still more opportunity to take advantage of this quintessential maritime facility and use it to create the capacity to keep citywide ferry service running. So the maintenance jobs will be here. There'll be the opportunity when any of these vessels needs work to bring them right here, right in the center of the action, right along the route, to get that work, get it done quick, get them back into service, reduce any delays with boats being out of service, reduce boats having to go all over the place and wasting fuel and time. Right here, that work can be done, and jobs will be created for New Yorkers. And that's exciting on its face. And then secondly, that we will have a ferry stop right here. Because the Brooklyn Navy Yard is already an extraordinarily dynamic facility. And the jobs here, an amazing number of jobs already, and we've talked about the pathway to 10,000 more that are part of our overall vision for 100,000 more good-paying jobs. So there's already a huge amount of activity here. There's going to be a lot more. So it made sense to put a ferry stop here and add to the vision we have for a ferry service citywide. Let me take a moment to thank some of the folks who are here. Really appreciate the partnership we've had with Hornblower, and I want to thank the Vice President General Manager for New York, Cameron Clark. Thank you very much. And then from our administration, the President of the Economic Development Corporation, James Patchett, Commissioner for Small Business Services, Greg Bishop, the President and CEO of the Navy Yard, David Ehrenberg, and the Chair of the Navy Yard Board, Hank Gutman. We thank them all for their efforts and their support. Now, let me tell you just a couple of other things. We believe fundamentally that economic opportunity has not been spread far and wide enough in this city over the years. We not only need more jobs to be constantly created, we need more good-paying jobs. We need them to get to people from the 5 boroughs. We need them to get to people who have not had as much access to a good-paying job. We need people to start out as deckhands and be able to work their way up to good-paying long-term jobs. The notion here is to make sure that more and more people have access to those jobs because they are truly connected. Now, The vision for citywide ferry service, we will have 21 neighborhoods that will be served by it in the plan we are implementing this summer and beyond. And as I've said, we're going to keep the door open to additions over time. But with those 21 neighborhoods, over 500,000 people will live within half a mile of one of those ferry stops. Half a mile. Walking distance. So again, over 500,000 people within half a mile of the 21 ferry stops we're creating. That is the equivalent, basically, of the entire population of Miami, Florida, to give you a sense of how much reach this ferry service will have. It's going to allow people to be able to get around to where the jobs are. It's going to allow people to be connected to employment and affordable housing opportunities. And it's quintessential to the notion of opening up places that haven't had a fair shake. You know, if you talk to people in the Rockaways, if you talk to people in South Brooklyn, if you talk to people in Soundview in the Bronx, they will tell you that they didn't feel like the city's transportation system was built for them. I've been saying the whole vision of what we're doing to address the affordability crisis, to get opportunity in more and more hands of more and more people, I summarize it by saying this is your city, meaning we're going to do things that work for everyday New Yorkers. We're going to do things that respect their needs and respond to them wherever they live, so they know their city is serving them. When we open up the service in the Rockaways, when we open up the service in Soundview, people are going to have access to opportunity they have not had for many, many years. And we know for them and their lives, it will be an extraordinary moment. So this is an exciting beginning, and we're particularly pleased that right here in Brooklyn, there'll be a whole new generation of folks who will get jobs taking care of these vessels and making citywide ferry service a success. Let me just say a few words in Spanish. El próximo año, el Navier de Brooklyn tendrá su propia parada de ferry y será un mejor centro de oportunidades para los neoyorquinos. Al mejorar las conexiones de transporte, estamos creando una ciudad más asequible para todos. Nuestro mensaje para cada neoyorquino en cada vecindario es: esta es su ciudad. What I'm going to do now, with the help of my colleagues, is take questions on this announcement related to the Brooklyn Navy Yard and obviously anything about citywide ferry service. Then I want to take a moment to talk to you about another important issue in the news today, and then we will go to all other topics. So first, I want to see if there's any questions related to this. Yes, Rich.
Could you remind us what the fare is going to be for this?
Fare will be the same as a subway fare. Marcia.
Mr. Mayor, two questions. First of all,
A little louder.
two questions. The first one is this. So a lot of the places that are going to be served by this ferry are underserved by mass transit.
Yes.
You know, the Rockaways, Soundview section of the Bronx. What will it mean for these people who heretofore have had poor mass transit options?
Right. Marcia, I've talked to, huh?
Suggestion is less people will be on the road.
Okay, I'm going to separate that into two parts. First of all, Marcia, I've talked to a lot of people in Soundview, in the Rockaways, in communities that feel really cut off from the rest of the city and are desperate for opportunity, but they don't feel they can get to where the jobs are. So it's a game changer for those folks. It's a game changer for folks who right now have a very, very long commute and a very inconvenient commute to get to jobs, to know this is going to make it a lot easier, a lot more straightforward to get to where the jobs are. That's a great thing to begin with. But then there's the real potential here as the ferry service grows, as more and more people experience it. I think a lot of people will get out of their cars, and that'll make our roads less congested. I think a lot of people will choose it compared to other mass transit options. That will help take away a little bit of the congestion and overcrowding we're experiencing, for example, on the subways. You know, where the ferry service is, because right away you got 500,000 people who live very near to one of these stops. That's extraordinarily important, but it's also a lot of places that are increasingly centers of job creation, like right here in the Navy Yard. So a lot of people are going to want to come to these places, and now they're going to have a much easier way to get there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that you also talking in your press release about the fact that once this is off the ground, you might consider going to Coney Island and to other places like Staten Island. Sorry. is that
Right. Do we have the whole map?
Staten Island and Coney Island.
So first of all, I want to make sure, next time we need a nice map graphic, but we'll make sure everyone sees it. We're going to do this in phases. So we're opening up each line as soon as they're ready to go, and that will start this summer. We have an initial set of lines that we have published, but I am very open to making additions after we see how the initial runs go. Look, it does cost money, but I think this is a really smart investment for New York City. We know we need more transit options. We know we got to give people better reasons to get out of their cars. We know we need to connect people to jobs more effectively. Because everything I'm saying about jobs, I don't want just more jobs. I want better paying jobs, and I want them to reach people from the 5 boroughs, a lot of whom haven't had enough opportunity. So we're going to see how the first phases of this go, Marcia. But if they continue to be productive, we're going to be open to expansion.
An opening date of this summer is a pretty broad period of time. Is there a more specific target for which line will start first and when?
My specific target is this summer. In April, we will have the announcement on the specific first phase and specific dates. But right now, we're going to keep it to a nice, clear this summer.
And then, as you talk about these 200 new jobs, what is the average salary we're talking about? Do they fit into the good-paying jobs?
Yeah, about half of them do immediately fit in the vein of 50,000 and up. And remember, my vision around good-paying jobs is, I love it when people can get right there immediately. Another great thing is when they get into a field where they can quickly rise up to that level. For example, film and TV is a great example. We have a lot of those kind of jobs. You don't walk in the door at that level, but you can get there in a reasonable few years. But in this case, about half of them are in that kind of vein. But the other half that are lower paid, they're all going to be living wage scale for sure. And as you heard, these are opportunities to grow with this enterprise. So folks who may start out working in a concession or something like that are going to have a chance, if they want to become a mechanic or something more skilled with longer term opportunities, that they'll have that opportunity to grow within.
To having like a one-seat ride from Manhattan to the airports?
We haven't gotten there. I'll be very straightforward with you about that. I think anything is worth consideration. Right now, we were focused on connecting people to job centers, helping places like this to keep growing, like the Navy Yard, because again, we see tremendous opportunity in Navy Yard, but we think this is the kind of thing that helps that opportunity to keep building. And obviously serving some places that had really been underserved by mass transit. But again, I am going to be open after I see how the first, let's say, year or so goes. I'm going to be open to other possibilities for sure. Let me get people who haven't gone yet. Yes.
Just wondering about the access to the stop here for residents of the nearby public housing. It says there's going to be free shuttle service.
Right.
Will they be required to take the shuttle? I mean, on a nice day like this, will they be able to walk through? Because I know it's kind of a private territory.
Mr. President, come join us. If you know the answer. James Patchett.
Yeah, absolutely. They can walk into the gate right here, or the shuttle is free and available and will run constantly.
Okay. Yeah.
So I know you spoke generally about expansion of service, but in addition to the Stapleton route to Wall Street that is potentially being studied or planned, would you consider adding St. George to the South Brooklyn line, which was proposed by Jimmy Otto?
Yeah, Jimmy Otto has spoken to me about several different options. We're going to look at all of them for sure. But again, what I'm trying to make really straightforward to everyone is we've put out our opening vision. That's what we're going with. We're going to put that into place over the next months and then continue to add lines till we get to the full 21 stops. Then, as we see that work, we're going to make decisions about potential additions. Again, that will cost money. So it's going to be a budgetary decision as well as a decision about what the ridership levels look like. But look, if it's very popular, if people are using it, that's going to encourage us to want to go farther. So all those Staten Island options are on the table. Please.
What would you say to Staten Islanders who are a little frustrated that they're not included in the first or second phase?
I would say that the Staten Island Ferry, to begin with, is one of the greatest ferry systems in the country, one of the biggest riderships in the country, and connects immediately to a lot of the other things we're doing with mass transit. But again, we're starting with a vision. In addition to what the Staten Island Ferry already does for so many people, we're going to reach the other 4 boroughs now. We're going to connect a lot of people to a lot of jobs. We're going to see what the ridership levels are like. And then it's an open opportunity to see what we should do beyond that.
Some transit critics think that your focus on the ferry system has taken attention away from something you proposed, which was the Utica Avenue subway extension and other mass transit improvements. Are you still interested in pursuing the Utica
Yeah,
Avenue?
but I think we have to look at the timelines and the real potential for each kind of mass transit option. So it's a very, very fair question, but let me put it in perspective. You know, the thing that gets the least attention probably and deserves a lot more is select bus service. Utica Avenue is one of the places where we're doing that, and we are working with the MTA, partnering with them, and paying a substantial part of the cost to keep expanding select bus service. So that's really a great mass transit option that is much more appealing to a lot of New Yorkers than slower bus options, and reaching a lot of places that are underserved. That's been going great guns since we came into office. The light rail proposal, which is something we can do without having to wait on the MTA, that we are able to do ourselves and reach, again, a huge number of residents and places where there's a huge number of jobs. Obviously, the ferry service, which to me I feel particular passion about because I think it's got a chance to take our waterways, which have been neglected as an option, and put them in play. We control that. We can do it this quickly because we control it. If this had been in a proposal to the MTA, no offense to the MTA, they got a lot of good work they're doing, but it would have waited many, many years. A new subway line will be many, many years in the future. I still think the Utica Avenue line would have a lot to recommend it, but I have no illusion that it would serve people anytime soon. Witness how long it took to do the Second Avenue subway. So from my point of view, these are right now things. Ferry service starts this summer. Select bus service is expanding right now all over the city. We have the light rail scheduled for 2019, 2020. So I think my obligation is to put options in the hands of New Yorkers right now, and to the maximum extent possible, things that we can control so we're not at the whim of the state or the MTA as to when and how and if these things happen. Yeah.
You talk about opportunities for transit deserts, but your 2 projects here, the Citywide Ferry and the BQX, they're not integrated with the MTA. Do you think that creates a burden for certain riders who might not be able to afford paying for the ferry and then getting on a subway, or paying for the BQX and then getting on a subway?
Look, we would love to get a reciprocity plan in place for both the light rail and the citywide ferry service. It would be ideal if we could find a way to do it as a single fare. That's going to take some real work because they're operating on different systems. And again, there's real budgetary ramifications. But as a goal, it's a good goal, and it's something we will have serious conversations with the MTA on how to achieve. I can't guarantee it, though, because I think, again, there's a lot of hoops to go through. But let's remember a couple of things. For a lot of New Yorkers, the ferry service, for example, will take them from where they are to where they want to go, period, and there's no need for a transfer. I'll give you an easy example. If you live within a half mile of that Soundview stop in the Bronx and you want a job here at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, you're going to be able to do that. So the one thing is that we think this service is going to provide some real direct opportunities for people. The second is for some people, and it's a matter of choice. It's people who do make the choice of where to spend their money and take a ferry and then switch to a subway if we have not yet worked out that reciprocity. It still could be a lot better deal for them than getting in their car or other things that could cost more money. So we're going to keep working for the ideal outcome, but still, look, from my perspective, anytime you give people more options in transportation and it's affordable on its face, that's a good day for New York City.
Quick questions. When is this particular pier, I'll ask very quickly, this pier going to open? What are the hours of the ferry service? I'm not sure that I know. Is it 24/7? And then you said that a lot of the jobs of these 200 are in the vein of good-paying jobs, but you said half of them are. But can you be more specific about how many are good-paying?
I'm going to have James Patchett speak to any and all those topics.
Okay. Sorry, those
You can make
three
them repeat if you
questions.
want.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
can you start with the first one?
When is this pier going to open? What are the hours of the ferry service, and how many good-paying jobs out of the 200?
Right. So the first question, this is going to be complete at the end of this year. In terms of the home port, and then we will be opening the ferry service here next year in terms of a stop. To your second question about the hours of the ferry service, we haven't finalized the schedule, but it's primarily going to run during commuting times. During the day, it's not going to run 24 hours a day. We don't anticipate a lot of 3 a.m. ferry riders. They can stick to the subways. And then to your final question, as the mayor said, we anticipate, at least at the outset, that at least 50% of the jobs will be good-paying jobs, but there also is a tremendous opportunity advancement, and we have to look at that very closely as a way of creating career ladders for people.
Starting on the 24th of March, so shouldn't you know how many are good-paying at this point?
Yeah, we're not hiring all 200. I'm saying it's over 50%. I just don't have a precise number for you, and obviously you hire someone and you determine the salary once they're on board.
So let me say also two things. One, the maintenance as the lines begin opening up this summer. The initial maintenance will be done here in another part of the Navy Yard. I asked this question earlier from the folks doing the work here, and then it's going to be transferred over to the new pier that's being built. So this will be where all the maintenance is done. I also want to note that in terms of fostering opportunity, as those jobs are created, and again, I love jobs that are paying, a really great wage right now, but I also love jobs that give people a ladder upward. Greg Bishop and his team have worked very closely with the Navy Yard. I think it's largely felt that the Navy Yard has one of the most impressive workforce development efforts anywhere in the city, giving real opportunity for people from surrounding neighborhoods. So from the point of view of folks living nearby in Tish James' former council district, to have 200 more jobs dropped right here on top of the extraordinary additional growth happening in Navy Yard, they're going to be the first recipients of those opportunities. I'm going to take a few more questions at the end. I'd like you to speak to this topic, but I'm taking media questions.
As far as the fare, so I understand it won't be a Metro card. Do you have to have exact change report, or how is the fare collection going to work?
I don't think we've gotten to the whether you need exact change part yet, have we?
Just how does the fare collection work? And is there, I believe the East River Ferry now is a little more expensive, like
Well, that last part?
The East River Ferry now is a little more expensive, like $4 or something. Is that going to be reduced to meet?
All right, let me say what I know, and then we can see if James or anyone from Hornblower has any additional technical answers. We're clear about the fact that some of the other ferry services were more expensive, and that was one reason I think they maybe didn't have some of the ridership they could have. I felt very strongly at the beginning, if you peg it to a MetroCard fare, that's like the coin of the realm in our city. That's what people think about as the amount you pay to go somewhere. I think that's going to add a lot of ridership. In terms of the other East River ferry service, or whether you need exact change, who can speak to that?
So it's going to be a modern system, which means that you can do it on an app or on your phone, as well as there are going to be ticket vending machines. And what was your second question?
Will the existing East River Ferry routes fare reduced?
Yes, absolutely. The East River Ferry service is going to be integrated into the citywide ferry service, as well as adding this stop here at the Navy Yard, and all of that will be pegged to the MetroCard fare.
And then I also wanted to ask, I know you said you'd keep an open door to other stops, but just as I've been tweeting about this, people have made requests that they'd like to see Coney Island.
Well, thank you, Aaron, for adding.
What's the third one? Atlantic Avenue. Are any of those?
Again, we have an initial plan, 21 stops. That's a lot. This is a little bit of it's sort of a if you build it, they will come question. If we build it and people come in large numbers and it really does achieve what we hope, that will encourage more stops. I remain very open. We welcome all the nominations. EDC. You can send your nominations to EDC. That's right. But look, I think considering we've not had this in a century, so I want to put this in the category of a bold new idea. We have not had citywide ferry service in a century in New York City. This is a big new thing. 21 stops, 21 neighborhoods. I think it's going to have a huge impact. If it works as well as we hope, that will certainly open the door to more. But I think the smart thing to do in terms of the investment we're making is to do this first set of phases and then see how it goes. Yes, Grace.
On the jobs, do you have a breakdown of what kind of jobs they are?
Here, the 200?
And then when you mentioned opportunity for local residents, is there a hiring preference given?
So let me have Greg come up a bit on the local hiring here in the Navy Yard so we can get that clear, and then why don't you or whoever from your team talk about the kinds of jobs and the job titles and all.
Good morning. So we have worked with Hornblower in the past to fill some of these jobs, and we're going to use the same model, which is if anyone is interested, we're actually conducting interviews right now up to for March 24th. We are going to focus in the local area first, and when I say we, meaning our Workforce One system. And Hornblower has indicated the skill sets that they're looking for, and I think it's important to recognize that a maritime career is something that not a lot of New Yorkers have thought about, so certainly we're excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, I would just add, the Navy Yard operates an on-site employment center. Folks from the community walk in all day, every day. These jobs will be made available through that as well, and we will work with our local partners, including the NYCHA Tenant Association presidents, to make sure that local residents have as much access to these jobs as possible.
Hi there, just a quick follow-up on the jobs before the next set of questions. So it's really diverse workforce, everything from skilled mechanics, engineers, maintenance personnel, joiners and outfitters to be able to maintain the quality of the vessels, all the way through the maritime side, senior deckhands, captains, really diverse workforce, the entirety of an organization needed to not only run a service, but maintain it, market it, manage it. So, trades across all organizations. And as the commissioner was saying, we have some great job fairs coming up. That process is in work. And I know we'll be working with the media to help get the word out there, because this is really a great opportunity for folks that do have a skill set or are looking to attain one to become part of a really great project. Cameron Clark.
Just I want to note on that point that anyone, whether it's these jobs that are being created or any other jobs being created as part of the city's investments, anyone who wants to find out about these opportunities just needs to call 311, and they'll be connected to our Workforce One centers.
If you wanted to work on the maritime side of it, if you wanted to be a boat captain or something, do you have to have boat captain experience or a license?
No, you just walk up and just take one out for a spin.
That's a fantastic question. If you'd like to be a captain, you go to citywideferry.nyc, apply, and we'll get you engaged at a deckhand level. You will not be driving a boat without first being able to demonstrate the competency, and we're regulated by the United States Coast Guard, and it is actually a program and proficiency testing that you have to be able to demonstrate. Rich Payne and his team are a part of that process where we could show you the roadmap, the skill sets, the knowledge, the education that you need to get. There is some additional training that the Hornblower family and Citywide Ferry will support these individuals to go back and get to attain the coursework that they need. And we also have partnerships and programs with some of the local schools, internship programs with high schools such as New York Harbor School, all the way up to the undergraduate level at SUNY Maritime, where we'll be doing things such as simulation training. So it is not as simple as apply and you're a captain, but it is definitely, if you have the desire to get there, even if you don't have the license, the certifications to start, we can help provide that roadmap to allow an individual to get there.
Okay, well, I'll go to Rich.
Just technical questions about the vessels. How much are they per copy? Are they all? It looks very uniform on this depiction over here. Are they all uniform? How much horsepower? How quickly did it go? And what's the longest run you have at the moment?
That's fantastic. So there is a lot of uniformity. There's a lot of wisdom from the city to really support that. If you're looking to have a fleet that is resilient and can switch between routes and maintain a certain standard, there's a lot of formality across those. There's a unique difference with the Rockaway route. We understand the route and the transit is slightly different. In terms of horsepower, we get into specificity, around 800 horsepower per side on the majority of the vessels. Yes, dual engine, that's correct. Yes, sir.
And I mean, how big is the craft? What's the capacity? How many people?
Sure, 150 passenger vessels per vessel, and they are 86 feet long and 29 feet wide. And would love to get you more information on the vessels, the look and feel and layout as well after this, if that would be helpful.
How quickly can they travel? What's the?
Sure. So varying by route, they are on average between 25 to 28 knot vessels. Depending on current and tides, that will not be their normal operating speed. They will run at lower speeds along the East River, along the South Brooklyn route, but have capabilities in open water to support higher speeds if needed.
And Rich, you'll be one of the first people to experience these new ferries this summer.
Mayor, the city is going to provide a subsidy for the city is going to subsidize each ride. It says in the press release for the first 6 years. What will happen after that? Do you think that the ferries will be self-sufficient, or much like other mass transit, will you have to continue to subsidize?
Yeah, it's an open question, Marcia, obviously related to ridership. You know, the frame we've given us is pretty well into the future that we put forward now. I feel very confident this is a smart investment to see how far we can go with turning to our waterways as the best way to get around. If it takes off, if there's huge ridership, there's more chance it becomes self-sufficient or requires minimal subsidy. If it doesn't have as big ridership, but we still see value in it, there'll be more subsidy. So, you know, I think that time frame of going out 5-6 years, seeing how we do, will give us the answer to that question. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I want to go the trips, the 4.6 million annual trips. Do you have a sense of how many of those folks also need additional transit to get to work or to get to where they're going?
We don't have a specific number for you, but we can tell you that the projection of the numbers of trips is based on over 80% of those people essentially using the ferry as the main or exclusive form of transportation.
So that's the projection. When we get a year under our belt or something, we'll be able to do a thing we call exit polling, and we'll get a sense of really how people are living it and what they need. But that's how we're starting.
And looking at this and BQX and City Bike, although you are not putting city money into that at this time, some transit experts and analysts sort of say this is a very piecemeal approach. Do you feel like you have an overall transit vision and agenda, or is that hard for you because the MTA is so involved?
You know, I think there's, I guess, two answers to that. There's two trains running, if you will, here. You know, what the city is doing on its own and what the MTA is doing. I think they're complementary. When you look at the routes and how they function, I'm very comfortable with the fact that everything is supporting everything else. In terms of select bus service, which again, in ridership terms, is hugely important, that is a partnership between the city and the MTA that's functioning very well and is based on systematically determining where there are gaps we need to fill. So I think there is a vision in that we're grabbing every opportunity to fill gaps and reach places that don't have enough service, and it's moving very steadily by any measure. If you look at just over the last few years, the growth of select bus service, the ferry system coming online after 100 years, the light rail, I mean, that's a pretty steady, impressive growth in a city that already has a lot of mass transit. So I feel good. What I don't think we've done is sort of put it together in a single statement for people to see how all the pieces connect, and I think that is a commendable idea. In the back.
In terms of expanding economic opportunity and having this vision, why spend money on ferries and not, for example, fare?
And not on. Look, this is a world of choices. From my point of view, first of all, we desperately need to increase the options. I think you're right. I think your question is very fair, but I do think it's apples and oranges. Affordability of mass transit is a crucial issue. Availability of mass transit is another crucial issue. Right now, we don't have enough mass transit options, and we simply have to expand. We've got to get people off the streets. Got to get people out of the cars. We got to get people to have options other than overcrowded subway trains. So it just stands to reason we got to put every new option we can on the table, and we're going to keep doing that. And we think we have a special opportunity and a special ability to do that. Again, I value everything the MTA does, but these things we're talking about today would not happen because of the MTA. We have to do it ourselves. So that's the immediate reason why I would say sheer capacity needs to be a priority. On the question of the subsidies to the fares, I believe there's a structural problem there. I believe that is the MTA's responsibility. We have a budget dynamic already that comes with a lot of challenges, and we all know what's about to happen in Washington. We're starting to see it now. So I'm not going to go into whole new areas of spending when I know I'm going to have to make a lot of adjustments anyway because of the likely budget cuts from Washington. I also think the state of New York needs to take responsibility for the things that are its purview. And you've noticed the state trying to shunt expenses off on the city for the last few years. It was CUNY, it was Medicaid, obviously in terms of MTA. We're not going to do that in this budgetary atmosphere. So it is a good and a meaningful proposal, but it should be the state's responsibility in my view. Yeah.
You mentioned, I think it was 5 million people live within a half mile of the routes.
500,000. That's different than 5 million. Gotcha. Right, that's it, Tish. We'll just keep adding routes. Go ahead.
A number for a number of jobs or opportunities that are directly next to adjacent.
Connected to the routes.
We'll get that.
Yeah, we'll get that as part of the planning process, but we'll show you how we did that.
The jobs, are all 200 of them open, or is there going to be any kind of transfer of the people who are working with you?
Are all 200 open, or did I speak to that?
Essentially at this point, the principal positions are open and available. If you go onto the job website at citywideferry.nyc, really we're looking for the best of the best from industry here in New York, from other operators, from people outside of the area if need be as well. It is not biased to one organization or one group. We're really looking for the best of the best that fit within the culture to deliver the service.
But not generally transfers from other parts of your company right now.
From inside the company, yes, they're not generally transferring from other parts of our company. We're bringing in and hiring people who are local here, a part of the fabric of the city.
Are all 200 still open?
Yes, so to date, and I was talking with our director of HR, Sanela Hamandovic, in the back here this morning, and we've filled just over 50 jobs to date. So still a great number of jobs still open and available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of those 200 jobs, how many are full-time, how many are part-time?
How many are full-time, how many are part-time?
Those are full-time jobs that we're talking about right now. So in addition, there may be additional part-time jobs, but these are full-time jobs. Great health benefits, all the way down to pet insurance as well. 401k, retirement, health benefits, and really covers the gambit of offerings for our crew. Yeah. Pet insurance, yeah.
Is that a media question back there? Media? I'm sorry, you were so far back I didn't know.
The role of Citywide Ferry in the city's emergency preparedness and resiliency planning.
Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say that, I'll speak to it and then if James wants to add, just having more options is always good for addressing preparedness needs, and having waterborne options in particular are valuable because we know in some situations that other types of transportation get cut off. So I love the fact that this gives us more utility if we have to deal with an emergency situation.
If you look at the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, the Rockaways was completely cut off from mass transit because the A train went down for an extended period of time. So the city was forced to effectively build a pier and create a location that we could run a ferry after Hurricane Sandy. So we will have that pier in place and other locations that are cut off from mass transit in the event of storms will be able to immediately access ferry service and still get to work and wherever they need to go.
Excellent.
I heard someone mention concessions. Are there concessions on the boats?
Are
And,
there concessions?
Will there be alcohol served?
Ooh. Is that a personal interest question?
I think that was the number one question when we first announced Citywide Ferry. There will be concessions on board. We'll be working really diligently to work with local food purveyors to help find and provide the services and the food on board. And yes, we are working to provide alcoholic beverages as well. Relax, unwind, commuter cruise, get to where you need to get in comfort.
Yes, that got all covered.
So, waterborne vessels to some degree are weather dependent, aren't they? Are you concerned about what times service might have to be suspended? What about ice, stuff like that?
Sure. So I'll spend a moment elaborating on it, and everything back as James was sharing to the design of the home port and the facilities designed to support varying weather conditions. We understand the importance of a year-round service. The vessels are designed with everything down to heated bow decks to melt ice to reduce slip, trips, and falls, to systems designed to be able to run through icy, slushy conditions, to ice belts to be able to support in those types of environments. That being said, we'll always be up to the captain of the port and the Coast Guard to assess safety conditions, and times could stop based upon weather. That being said, we've got a robust communications program in place through the app, which is really critical, so that we can communicate to riders if there are route changes, if there are impacts. We want people to know about that in advance to be able to plan how they're going to get connected. So it is resilient. It's designed to be able to operate 365, but if changes are required because of weather, we'll be communicating in advance to riders to be able to know that.
Let me just do a plant a question follow-on. Your existing services you provide in the New York area, just can you give some sense of how often they're knocked out by weather?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Very rare is the question, or is the answer to that. We are operating here in the harbor, nearly 20 vessels right now currently within the harbor, carrying millions of passengers, and it's a very rare time that we've had to shut down service because of weather conditions.
Okay. Last call on this, and I want to have Tish James say a few words about it, and then I want to speak about another matter for a couple of minutes, then off topic. Tish James, public advocate and former representative of this community.
Of the Navy Yard. So let me just say on this Women's International Day that you too can be a captain.
That's right.
She's not paying attention. You too can be a captain on this
You
Women's Day.
just
Congratulations.
walk right on and take over.
I would be remiss if I didn't say, may Mr. de Gaulle rest in peace. He envisioned, obviously, this ferry stop. As a former city council member for this district, Mr. Mayor, let me apologize. I came all the way from the South Bronx. Yeah, and that's why I'm late. And had we had a ferry service, I would have taken the ferry and would have been here on time. And so from the Navy Yard to Staten Island to the South Bronx and the Rockaways, and hopefully Brooklyn Bridge, as well as the Coney Island, they deserve high quality transit, which is why the mayor investments in ferry service and other forms of transportation have been so appreciated. So the constituents that I used to represent in Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and all of the residents in the public housing always wanted to know what was behind the walls of the Navy Yard. And so we are demystifying the Navy Yard. The Navy Yard, in addition to this ferry service, which is going to be absolutely fabulous, we set up an employment service. My former chief of staff, Gigi Davis Elliott, is here, was responsible for that, as long as, with Mr. Al Wilshire. We opened it up for residents. They get a first preference in the jobs. The Navy Yard is also known now as Hollywood East. Thanks to Mr. Steiner. We're doing a great job, and soon we'll be opening up a wonderful supermarket with additional jobs, and we anticipate that announcement as well. And so the Navy Yard is open for business. We're demystifying it. We're offering opportunities, and now we're going to have the opportunity to go to Staten Island and to the Rockaways, and we're going to integrate our system, and we're going to get to know one another with a little bit of alcohol. Thank you so much.
Oh, Tish, you think of everything. Okay. Let me close the book on the ferry service and talk about something that's happening literally as we speak in Washington. It's going to have a huge impact on New Yorkers. As you know, at this moment, the House of Representatives is discussing potential repeal of the Affordable Care Act. I want all New Yorkers to understand what this would mean for our city. There are 1.6 million New Yorkers who depend upon health insurance that was made available to them through the Affordable Care Act. 1.6 million people right now have health insurance because of it. There's another 500,000 people who are eligible, who we are trying to get health insurance, who need it, who deserve it, who are only going to have an opportunity for it so long as the Affordable Care Act is alive. And we have a goal this year of adding 50,000 more people who will be insured, whose families will be protected if there is an Affordable Care Act to work with. The discussions in Washington seem to leave out how devastating the impact would be on 1.6 million New Yorkers and tens of millions of Americans. And right now, I think what you've seen initially with the town hall meetings around the country is just the beginning of the outcry. I want you to know there's that reason alone to be concerned, the individual impact, the impact on New York families, but there's also a tremendous danger to our public hospital system. We, at this point, project that if the Affordable Care Act were repealed, that about 200,000 New Yorkers who regularly use the Health and Hospitals Corporation for their care would no longer have insurance. Therefore, all those costs would be borne by the taxpayers in New York City. So I want people to feel this very personally. This would be the federal government forcing a huge new expense on the people of New York City. And it would endanger the fiscal stability of our public hospital system, which already has gone through so much turmoil. This would probably mean hundreds of millions of dollars more in deficits for our public hospital system. Now, I want you to know that I'm not taking this lying down, nor are my fellow mayors around the country. I was just in Washington last week meeting with the leadership of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I want to report to you that there is a strong bipartisan consensus in the Conference of Mayors that a repeal of Obamacare is unacceptable, and that we have to have, in whatever happens next, full coverage for all those who currently have benefited from the Affordable Care Act and the Medicaid expansion. Very strikingly, Republican mayors spoke just as passionately as Democratic mayors, because they made clear it would be devastating to their residents, and also their business communities feel strongly it would undermine the quality of life and the business climate for their cities to have so many people uninsured and to have their hospital systems go under additional stresses. So we think we're going to have an opportunity to build a very strong coalition, mayors around the country, working with business leaders, faith leaders, and others, to not just fight this on a national level, but to go right to those red and purple state representatives in the House and the Senate. And their own Republican mayors are going to confront them. Their own business leaders are going to confront them and let them know that a repeal would be absolutely counterproductive to their cities and their states. So I just wanted to comment on that because I think we're at the beginning of a very dramatic moment in our nation's history and a very big fight ahead, and one where you're going to see some very surprising voices, including from Republicans and the business community, joining us in fighting against repeal. So I want to just see if there's any questions about that, and then we'll go to other topics. Anything on ACA? Yes?
You said, I believe, hundreds of millions more.
Say it louder, please.
You said it's been hundreds of millions more in deficit for HHC. Do you have any more precise connections?
No, that's just the initial evaluation. We'll get more specific numbers as we go along. Look, we all know right now that this discussion could take many turns. But anything like a repeal, we're immediately saying hundreds of millions of dollars a year in cuts that would affect Health and Hospitals Corporation. And again, when you think about our city, any county, any state, all of the expenses for people who are uninsured that then are borne by public hospitals, who pays for that? Local taxpayers end up paying for it. And I think for a lot of the Republican senators and House members, when local taxpayers start to figure out that that expense is being forced upon them, that's also going to cause a real backlash. Anything on this, Marcia?
If this were to go into effect, would any
Louder.
If this were to go into effect, would any hospitals, HHC hospitals, be jeopardized? Would you face possible closing of hospitals?
I heard to jeopardize. I couldn't hear you after that.
Could you face possible closings of
Look,
HHC hospitals?
I've been very clear the vision we have a lot to do right now to fix the Health and Hospital Corporation's finances. And our vision is to keep healthcare facilities in place and to avoid layoffs, although we've been very clear there will be attrition, there will be transfers and retraining, a lot of other steps. If we have to deal with hundreds of millions of dollars more in cuts, it's going to be very, very challenging. I'm not going to offer a theoretical of how we deal with it, but I can tell you it's going to make a bad situation worse and, again, put more burden on New York City taxpayers. Please.
How are the insurance signups going so far? Do you know how many people?
For the January 30th deadline, our estimate is we added about 17,000 more people. So basically in December, January, with additional outreach beyond those that we think would naturally have signed up. Otherwise, we believe we added about 17,000 more. The goal is to add 50,000 more, total for the year of 50,000 in 2017, above and beyond that which we think would have naturally occurred. Yes?
The state already goes beyond federal regulations to cover classes of people in its Medicaid program. I mean, it does more than the federal government does. If the repeal program goes through and the replacement that they've put out also were to pass, would the city, or is the city discussing the possibility of making up for the subsidies that people would lose? You've seen it reported that like the people ages 50 to 64 would lose thousands of dollars that they're now getting annually in these.
The problem is, look, I'm not going to speak to the theoretical, but I can tell you the challenge that would immediately cause. We're already looking at the first wave of budget cuts starting to come in. Obviously, you saw the report on initial cuts from HUD to the Housing Authority. And we haven't even gotten to the April continuing resolution in the Congress or the October budget for the next year. We're bracing ourselves for a lot of challenges. So I'm not going to speak at this point about any ways we would compensate. I don't want to give Washington the easy out of saying localities can compensate, because at a certain point we literally will not be able to, because if we are cut on many, many fronts simultaneously, we'll run out of options. So I think here's one where we can fight and win at the point of contact. This effort to repeal Obamacare, and I think everyone's been watching, has hit more roadblocks in just a matter of weeks than I think anybody in the Trump administration or Speaker Ryan ever would have anticipated. We're not going to take this lying down. We're going to organize with other leaders around the country, particularly mayors, and again, a lot of folks in the business community who feel this too, to stop this negative impact from happening, because you cannot see a repeal of the Affordable Care Act and then a host of other federal budget cuts without devastating city budgets all over the country. Last call on this, and we'll go to other topics. Rich.
How would you describe the intensity and the importance of the coming battle you are about to wage?
Oh, I think it's going to make the battle in 2009 and 10 look small, honestly. Because, in 2009, 2010, President Obama, to his great credit, was trying to address something that literally presidents off and on for a century were trying to get done, to give Americans the opportunity to get health care across the board. And yes, you saw, dramatic town hall meetings and things like that. But the president was able to pass it, and now it is the facts on the ground. The Americans are experiencing what's good about the Affordable Care Act. I don't know anyone who says it's perfect. I don't think it's perfect. But we do know that 30 million people have benefited. We do know that for a family who has health care versus a family that doesn't, we know the vast difference that means in their life. And a lot of those people had no health insurance before, and for now, the last few years, they've experienced what it's meant to them. I think when you tell 30 million people you're going to take something away from them, that's an entirely different kind of fight. And beyond that, you see the immediate splits within the Republican Party, sort of on both sides, the right wing and the more moderate wing of the party. You see people concerned on both sides of that. I think Democrats are very resolute about fighting this. And I think there's a lot of enlightened interests in the business community who understand this would be very, very bad for their local economies. And nothing that's being talked about would actually replace the scope of what's available under the Affordable Care Act. I think it's going to be an exceedingly dramatic battle that could play out over a very long time. Last call on this. Okay, going to other topics. I'm going to listen while I drink a non-alcoholic beverage, since we had a theme earlier.
NYCHA lost $35 million in federal funding this month, and there could be up to $150 million more cuts to come. First of all, have you considered and would you commit to using city money to make NYCHA whole? And secondly, are there other examples of city agencies that have so far lost funding under the new president?
Mara, on the second question, I don't know of another example. Again, the two opportunities we'll have to really get a look at where things are going will be the continuing resolution in April and then the full budget in October. So I think it's too early to tell what the shape will be. I think there's going to be a big fight over a lot of these issues too. When I was meeting with the Conference of Mayors, we talked about all the basic federal grant programs that support economic development in cities and housing creation in cities. Not only are mayors going to fight against any cutbacks, and governors as well, but a lot of folks in the business community of those cities recognize how important those initiatives are to building the local economy. And everything's theoretical until you tell people you're going to take something away from them. So two crucial U.S. senators from Arizona, absolutely pivotal members of the Senate right now, Senator McCain and Senator Flake. They've got Phoenix, one of the top 10 cities in population in the country. They've got Tucson. When they find out what's going to happen to their constituents, a lot of other pretty good-sized cities, because of these cutbacks, we'll see what they think about that. If those two votes waver on any given issue, the thing's off the table. It's as simple as that, because the Senate is so close. So I think you're going to see a very intense fight to guard against some of these cuts. But on your first question, I'm going to be very careful about this. We have in the executive budget an opportunity to declare how we're going to handle some things. But by and large, we're not going to get ahead of the action and start saying what we will compensate for and what we won't compensate for. First and foremost, because if we say it, we have to live up to it, and we don't know the magnitude of the cuts. We don't know what we're facing. And I think we've all seen, President Trump is a moving target to begin with, and his relationship with the Congress is very unclear on some of this. And I think there'll be a real backlash on a lot of these issues locally. So it's a very roiled situation. But I'm going to be careful not to say what we are going to be able to compensate and what not, because we don't know the magnitude. That's going to have to be handled on a case-by-case basis. And the next milestone will be the executive budget. David?
Your question based on something you said last week, so I want to quote it. You said, when I was sitting council member, public advocate, and again as mayor, I believe it is perfectly appropriate to put an issue on an agency's plate. The agency has to make the decision that they see as right. So can you provide some examples of where you've done this?
No. I think it speaks for itself.
How does it speak for itself?
I believe it speaks for itself.
Mayor, a 3-month-old baby died in foster care in Queens yesterday. Do we know if protocols, if ACS protocols were followed in terms of, I believe this baby had been in the hospital and released into foster care? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm waiting for a full report. I'm familiar, at least, to know the very basic facts. We don't know enough about why the baby died. We don't know enough about the history. The child was in foster care, so obviously there had been a government intervention to put that child into foster care. But we need to know more, so I want to get the facts straight before answering further. Grace?
You've spoken earlier about the list of crimes that would lead the NYPD to cooperate with ICE to deport an undocumented immigrant. Some crimes that are not on that list have to do with sexual abuse, sexual misconduct. Have you made any decisions about adding additional crimes to that list, and would offenses dealing with sexual abuse be on there?
We are, okay, first I'd say the 170 crimes, if you look at the list, clearly address the most serious, most violent crimes. And I just want to now take a point of privilege to ask a question. Would you please raise your hand if you've actually looked at the list of 170 crimes? Okay, for the half of you had, I commend you. Thank you for being good students. Will the rest of you please do it, because I think it's quite telling. You'll see how consistent that list is on the most serious and most violent crimes. But as I've said, we're going to look at a number of other offenses to make a decision. That process is underway. I can't give you an exact date by which we'll have an answer, but it's going to be pretty soon. And then we'll describe why and how we came to those conclusions about what we're proposing. Now, we have to go back to the City Council, and that'll be a legislative process, but we'll talk about what additions we believe might be necessary.
You can't unilaterally make that. You would need council approval.
There are instances outside of city law, just to be clear. I think, I can't remember if it was Commissioner O'Neill or Deputy Commissioner Burns spoke to this, I think at the last press conference with the police statistics. There are things like reentry. If you're deported and you come back, that's a federal offense. That's an automatic situation where there is cooperation. But in terms of the 170 offenses and adding to that list, which is a matter of city law, clearly you have to go back and amend the city law. Yes, Hannah.
Last year, the number of overdoses on Staten Island increased 55% since 2015, and that could go up because they're still being certified. I know that you're going to announce an opioid plan in the coming weeks, but I just was wondering, like, what could the city possibly do that you're not already doing? Like, because why wouldn't you already be doing it?
Like every other, this is a crisis. This is a crisis all over this nation. It has grown so intensely. We're doing a lot of things. NYPD is doing a lot of things right now to try and stem this crisis. The health department's trying to do a lot right now, but we're going to add additional elements to this fight because what we're doing is good, but it's not enough. We have to do more, and we're going to announce a plan that does a lot more. It's as simple as that. No, I'm going to have to, it's not going to be long. When we have the plan ready, you're going to hear all about it. Yoav.
Mr. Mayor, last month you said the increase in the graduation rate at renewal high schools, quote, proves this real impact is being made through the Renewal Schools initiative. Just wondering what you would say to renewal school graduate Hidekal Reyes Lopez, who told the Post that upon entering college she had to learn, quote, the 4 years of math that I didn't get in high school, and that, quote, I think they actually shouldn't have graduated me. Or the student who said he and several classmates were forced to transfer out of a renewal school after the principal, quote, told us to our faces, you need to leave, you're not good for this school, you're bringing kids down.
Okay. With all due respect, I have not received independent validation of those specific quotes and circumstances, but I will speak to the broad reality. I don't want us to leave any child without a proper education. I don't know her circumstance, but any child that didn't get a good enough education, that's not acceptable to me, and that's why we're trying to fundamentally change the school system. Now, again, I don't know about that specific allegation of what a principal said. One of the things I say very clearly about traditional public schools I value is we serve every kind of student. We all know there are some other schools that tend to, unfortunately, in some cases, exclude students. We don't do that, and none of our people should be doing it. But I don't know the facts, and I'm not going to speak to facts I don't know. The renewal schools in general, look, we're talking about schools that have had the toughest times for years, that were not working, that needed a different approach. The previous administration tended to close in a very arbitrary fashion without attempting to turn schools around, and then left a lot of students in the lurch in the years in which the schools were being closed. There was very little effort to work with parents. We said we had a different model. We were going to take 3 years to attempt a real turnaround. Now, from the beginning, we did not say we were going to have perfection. We knew some schools, we were very confident, would make it through, improve, if you will, graduate out of renewal school status. Others might need a little more time. Others might make sense to merge because of size. We've done some of that. Some would make sense to close after an honest effort to turn them around, close, but with a much clearer plan as to how to support those kids who would no longer have that option. We've been doing that. We're going to get to the end of this year and have a much fuller assessment of all of the renewal schools. But it is a fact that graduation rates have been going up overall in those schools. It is a fact that attendance has been going up overall in those schools. And a number of those schools are going to graduate out of renewal status. And that's a lot better than what was happening before, in my view.
Allegations, though, are
Sure, I'll have folks look into those, absolutely. And you can help connect us to the individual student. Go ahead.
The health department is reporting today this year's first case of neonatal herpes related to the mitzvah b'peh, the circumcision practice. The administration said in 2015 that when a baby was found to have contracted this, that community rabbis would identify the moil and make him undergo testing to see if the strain matched. Can you tell us, did that happen? Did the strain match in this case?
We literally heard about this case at some point in the afternoon yesterday. We're right now in that process of identifying the moil, and we expect full cooperation from the community. Last call, anything else? Yes?
Ask you on the NYCHA funding and the city's sort of preparation for eventualities out of the Congress. It's my understanding that NYCHA actually in budgeting for this year had already sort of anticipated getting less money and had budgeted down what they expected to receive from the feds. That what they ended up getting was even lower than that by a small amount. Why is it right for NYCHA to start planning ahead this year but not for the other city agencies?
I don't know if no disrespect to you, I just don't know if your information is accurate. You're saying something I hadn't heard before, but I also want to note that this particular cut also, to the best of my understanding, had to do with some issues that were being addressed previous to the Trump administration as well. So, something where there was a specific gray area if NYCHA made a decision about that, I understand that. But the broad answer is, and this is what we said at the preliminary budget, and I'll say it again now. The minute we start saying we anticipate X amount of cut, first of all, there's no way to know what that cut will be. You're all watching the same dynamics in Washington I'm watching. We don't know what it's going to be. We also are not going to say to folks in Washington, go ahead and cut us because we have so much money to put it. We don't. Our reserves could be eaten up very, very quickly if the magnitude of budget cuts that's possible here was to play out. And remember, you're talking about, listen to all these factors in a nutshell. Just the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, what it would do to everyday New Yorkers, what it would do to Health and Hospitals Corporation. A tax cut for the wealthy and corporations will greatly reduce federal revenue. That most likely comes out of housing, education, mass transit funding for cities. The increase in military spending will be compensated for because you've got a House, particularly a House of Representatives, doesn't believe in deficit spending. The increase in military spending will come out of domestic spending. That will come out of initiatives that support those same things: education, mass transit, affordable housing. That's just for starters. You could be talking hundreds of millions of dollars in a heartbeat. So I am not going to send a message that's okay. It's not okay. We want to fight each and every one of those cuts, working with allies all over the country. And again, I think on almost every one of them, there are vulnerabilities to the position of the Trump administration and Republican leadership. I think the tax cuts are going to have a huge backlash from people who supported President Trump, who did not sign up for tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations, for example. So a lot to play out, but our job is to have strong reserves and be ready, but we're not going to make it easier on them to do what they intend to do. Yeah.
The one House budgets are due soon from the state legislature. Can you describe your latest dialogue with Speaker Hasty and how you feel like those dynamics in Albany are playing out regarding New York City interests?
Speaker Hasty and the Assembly have been extraordinarily supportive. I've talked to him about, all of the current greatest hits. Obviously, the housing MOU is one of the ones we care about the most. We want clarity on that set of resources. It's a lot of money. It's $2 billion. We have no idea how it's going to be used. There's been no specific plan. It could be incredibly helpful to our efforts to address affordability. We're particularly concerned about the supportive housing proposal from the state. It's supposed to be 20,000 units. There's not a single unit being produced anywhere at this point. There's no plan. There's no timeline. We really need that. So I've certainly spoken to the Speaker about getting that nailed down in the budget. He's, I think, been very supportive. NYCHA funding, when I originally went to the state 2 years ago, I said, we'll put $300 million into capital for the Housing Authority. Please match us. All the state did was give us $100 million, and the vast majority of that we haven't seen yet, and it's been 2 years. I have since added $1 billion to capital funding for NYCHA. I think the least the state could do is make a serious investment in the Housing Authority in this budget. I think the Speaker is very sympathetic on that front. So those are examples.
Do you get a sense that Governor Cuomo is, friendly to city interest at this point? Are you both in sort of just a ceasefire, holding pattern?
I've seen attempts to characterize the dynamics. I would be careful about any of that. It's a real simple formula. I've said it before. It bears repeating. If the governor does something that helps New York City, I will commend him and thank him. If he does something that hurts New York City, I'll call him out for it. I have not gotten any clear answer from the second floor on what's going to be in the housing MOU, if there's going to be a clear plan around supportive housing, if there's going to be additional support for the Housing Authority. In this case, silence is not golden. I don't know why it's hard for them to come out with specifics, and particularly to address the needs of a city that's 43% of the state's population. But I haven't gotten any clarity on any of those fronts. As you know, there's also some cuts in the state budget. Tens of millions of dollars here and there, senior centers, foster care, additional areas that we're really concerned about. I think the Assembly is very sympathetic to our position. Again, I don't think they should have been in the governor's budget to begin with. I hope he'll reconsider.
Tomorrow night you have a town hall meeting in Brooklyn, the homeless shelter in Crown Heights. I know you've said you're expecting to come up. I'm wondering if you have any strategies that you're employing right now around the messaging with this homeless shelter plan, and any lessons learned from your affordable housing rollout, where you got a lot of negative feedback up front from community boards. Anything you're planning to do differently this time, maybe in light of that, to build support?
It's a great question, but I do think they're kind of apples and oranges. I think we had, with the affordable housing plan, something that really was going to help a lot of people, and we didn't do a good enough job making it real and personal to them. And we spent way too much time getting the facts out, and that's why I think there was a lot of resistance at the community board level. I think with dealing with the realities of homelessness, I have no illusions. I'm going into this town hall meeting very willingly, very comfortably, and expecting to have a very lively conversation. That's my job, to go and explain to people some of the hard truths and some of the ways we have to deal with things. I don't know any community that says, please, let's have more homeless shelters. What we want to show people is we can do them very differently than they were done in the past, with a strong presence of the NYPD, both inside and outside, to make sure things are more secure, with new facilities that are built the right way, really addressing community concerns consistently, and with a clear understanding of each community serving people from their own community, which I think will ultimately be a game changer. So I think where I think your question leads to an obviously good point is the one thing that we're going to be able to say to people they've never experienced in 35 years of the modern homelessness crisis is you will overwhelmingly have people from your own community be served in your own community. We'll say that very intensely. I think for some people that's going to matter a lot. I think for some people that'll be a game changer. I think for other people that will be a knee-jerk negative. But the more, look, it's on us to, it's more deed than word here. It's on us to show that this can work better. And every time we do, I think it will open up people's minds and willingness to work with us. Last question.
That was part of mine, but there's an installation down at Bowling Green of a young girl facing off against the Wall Street Bull.
When you say installation, I'm not familiar with it. What do you mean?
Some public art. Have you not seen that photo of the public art? It's all a buzz on Twitter. It's
all a buzz.
Of the fearless girl facing off against the Wall Street Bull. Generally looking for your reaction to that, the idea of it maybe becoming permanent, and if you want to comment on International Women's Day.
On the first point, I haven't seen it, so I'm going to reserve my artisari. I've had other things on my mind. I will take a look and give you a comment. Certainly in a free society, I appreciate freedom of speech, and I have my own critique of Wall Street. So I'll take a look at it and let you know what I feel. On the second point, I'm very excited about today. I would generally be excited about International Women's Day. I'm even more excited because people are mobilizing all over the country and all over the world to fight for the rights of women. And I wish the rights of women were not under such assault as they are right now, but what I have been very struck by is how intense the response is. I've never seen anything like it, and that's a compliment. I'm really happy to see something of this magnitude. January 21st, the largest protests in response to a new presidency in the history of the Republic. I haven't seen yet what's played out today, but I'm very confident it will have a big impact. And I think you're going to see a lot more like it. I don't think any of this is going to, and some people said, oh, the protests and the concerns are going to wind down. They're not going to wind down. This is just a beginning because it's an intolerable situation to so many people. Thank you, everyone.